Once upon a time, I too once thought I wanted to be a lawyer, specifically an international lawyer who would be able to tackle policies and affairs between the United States and Korea. Why? Well, first, growing up as a Korean American, I was asked to explore careers like law and medicine as they are seen to be more stable and respectful jobs. But second, I was also interested because of the positive impact one could have in society as a lawyer. My first memory of a legal career was in middle school, 7th grade. I was in this leadership program where we'd study and read books of how leaders had grown and fallen. I noticed how figures like Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela were all lawyers, and how understanding the legal system permitted them to speak for others and create lasting societal changes. I was inspired. I wondered how I could contribute to society if I studied law too, which quickly died as I realized I wasn't very good at legal details. Even just going through the test prep books for the LSAT, the test you take before entering law school, made me so unhappy. Have you seen those? Yeah, they're difficult, and that's supposed to be the easier part of their career. Perhaps this is one of the many reasons why when I do meet friends who love what they do as a lawyer, I'm even more curious. Tell me more about how you got to do what you do. Did you always want to be a lawyer? How did you build your niche? And how did you make being a lawyer a fun career? This is Monica Kang, and today at Curious Monica, I'm excited to uncover more about lawyers.
When you go from undergrad to law school or to a professional degree, the hurdle you jump is so steep, and it's almost like you're in a different world. I remember my undergrad degree was in psychology, so I did a lot of writing. And then I get to law school, and my lawyering process professor, essentially a legal writing professor, essentially told me my writing sucks, and I'm like, I need to start over. And I was like, no one had ever said that to me before.
As an attorney, every case is very different, and you have to approach each case with a very critical eye. So that's one aspect, just continuing to be very thirsty for knowledge, just being a lifelong learner. And if you love learning, then being a lawyer is a great field because you are consistently learning. You're learning from your clients, you're learning from opposing counsel even, you're learning from your colleagues, you're learning from so many different people, you're learning traditionally just through books about what the best practices are and how to be the most effective advocate.
And I had my best club clothes on. That was my best dress. I didn't have like a suit or anything. I was used to going to the clubs, and I went into this courtroom in my high heels and my little fitted skirt. And I remember every time she would start to cry, I would say, "Judge, I know what happened." So he came over and I would start talking, and he had an attorney. He had a lot of money. She couldn't afford an attorney. And the attorney on the other side said, "Hey, Judge, you need to tell her she can't talk in court. She's not a lawyer."
Hi, welcome to Curious Monica by InnovatorsBox, where we study how different people thrive at different jobs. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and today I'm excited to speak with 3 friends who love being a lawyer and also found ways to catalyze their creativity. Some knew they wanted to be a lawyer and some didn't, but the key is they had their own reasons for wanting to pursue it. For instance, Natashia Deón, a criminal attorney, shares that she didn't really picture herself as a lawyer early in her career. You have to spend a lot of time in school to study law, and growing up, she didn't really enjoy school at first.
No, I didn't. I didn't even think I'd be a lawyer. I wasn't great in high school until my senior year, which, as we know, it's too late when you start that, rally in your last year, So I was accepted into a special program at Cal State Long Beach, and I just became an A student, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. My parents were from Alabama, and they were part of the Great Migration. So they came to California, and it was very similar to, in that way, an immigrant experience. They're escaping the terrorism of the South, because that was in the late 60s, just after Martin Luther King was assassinated. So I knew I had to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. And I wasn't interested in any of that until I got thrown out of a courtroom.
So what happened in that courtroom?
I was there to help a friend. I was working in radio at the time. I was like, this is fun. I get to talk to people. And I went to support a friend who had been abused. And she was trying to talk to the judge and get a protective order. And it was part of her divorce. And I wasn't supposed to be saying anything, and I had my best club clothes on. That was my best dress. I didn't have like a suit or anything. I was used to going to the clubs. And I went into this courtroom in my high heels and my little fitted skirt. And I remember every time she would start to cry, I would say, Judge, I know what happened. So he came over and I would start talking. And he had an attorney. He had a lot of money. She couldn't afford an attorney. And the attorney on the other side said, hey, Judge, you need to tell her she can't talk in court. She's not a lawyer. So I was like, okay. So I sat down and the judge was like, you have to be quiet. I did it again. He was like, if you do that one more time, you're going to have to be kicked out of the courtroom. So I was like, okay, Judge, I got this. I'm going to sit here, be quiet. And of course, as you would probably guess, my friend is crying and I get kicked out of the courtroom. And as I'm kind of shimmying my way out of the back doors, I remember turning around, telling the judge, I said, I will never be this powerless again to help the people that I love. And I was enrolled in law school like 6 months later, and the rest is sort of history.
Wow, history indeed. Today, not only is she passionate about serving her clients as an attorney in contracts, litigation, and criminal justice, but she is also an entrepreneur, author, and a teacher who uses creative means to problem solve and empower others to have a voice. She founded the Redeem Project in 2018 and partnered with professional writers to assist inmates who were seeking clemency and an opportunity to contribute to society. She also teaches creative writing at the Otis School of Design and UCLA and is the author of the critically acclaimed novel Grace, which was named a Best Book by the New York Times and awarded Best Debut Novel by the American Library Association Black Caucus in 2016. I asked her how she did all of this. Pursuing law already is a lot. What skill helped her navigate all of this? She says, we have to start with the process of law school.
It was hard getting in law school because you have to take the LSAT, the placement test, to see how you compare to other people. I was never good at standardized tests. I didn't score like super high, but I did okay. And I took it a second time and I had to pay, and it's expensive to take a prep class. And I had a job at that time. So I ended up getting a regular person's job. I was working in insurance and I was studying, but I was also working full-time 9 to 5. And then I would work at a hotel at night. So I was doing that job and on weekends. So when I was accepted into the law school that I ended up going to, I went to school, went to school, and on the weekends I worked at a hotel. So I worked my way through it. And I always try to skip over all that because I'm like, people don't want to know about that. So I'm glad that you asked me because people usually don't ask. It was hard work. I didn't come from a family with a lot of means. I had some student loans that I was able to get. And I was working full time, and that's how I made it happen. But it also cost me because in order to get a great job when you graduate college, you have to have a great internship, right? And I didn't have time for an internship on top of 2 jobs plus law school. So that's how you end up paying for it, or I ended up paying for it in that way. So I didn't have a place to go. So in that way, I had to make it up. And I think a lot of us are doing that now anyway, especially during COVID. I think people realize that you have to sort of make up your life. Your best life is the one you make up. So I've been making it up for a very long time, including after when my son was born. He was born with disabilities. So even though I was at the top of the game in insurance because I worked really hard, making a lot of money and thought it would continue. But once my son was born with disabilities and he needs 24-hour care, I knew that life would look different. It wasn't just, get even a nanny or just get them in preschool or get them in play groups. Like no play group would accept them because they're like, we don't know what to do with the special needs child.
Natashia shares that these constant challenges in life encouraged her to embrace creating her own path. Don't see advocates in law? Be a lawyer. Don't see representation in literature? Write a book. Don't see inmates getting the support they need? Create an organization. And while all of these skills seem so different, Natashia shares how connected these worlds are for her. Skills are transferable, and at the very moment she wanted to give up, she was reminded why her passion permits her to have a unique voice and perspective.
That's a great question, Monica. Because every day I think I'm going to give this up. I'm going to give up one of these things. I can't even say, that it doesn't occur to me to give up law or give up creative writing or teaching, because I fight that battle every day. We wrestle with these things, and it's healthy, I think, to do that. And sometimes we do have to put things down. But to me, they speak to each other. Law reminds me of how vulnerable I am. Like we're all one step away from having a bad situation, a car accident, a drink we shouldn't have had, cheating on taxes, or filing extra EDD or something like that, unemployment. I don't know, that we're all just a step away from making a bad decision, whether we choose it or it happens to us. So being in law for so many years and seeing all the ways that people make mistakes, it reminds me, wow, it could be me. And what kind of attorney would I have with me? Because I know that I don't have, for instance, $10,000 to retain an attorney. So now what? So you have a public defender is what you have, who has a lot of other cases, and you feel like a number. And I would hope that someone like me would take interest if I made a mistake. I can't think of, I'm sure there's plenty of things I'm doing. I'm not perfect. But I think about that. And then in creative writing, because creative writing is about telling the story of humanity. Writers, professional writers especially, are the consciousness of our nation, or whatever nation they're in, of the world, bigger picture. We're trying to tell the truth all the time. We don't always use exact facts, but we're telling the truth. And so to me, they both speak to each other, and also teaching, because you remember what it's like to be a learner. You remember what it's like to be vulnerable and depending on a teacher and what you learn. And I tell my students, it doesn't matter if you get A's on every test. I want you to walk out of this classroom, especially when I'm teaching law, being a better citizen, like being a better person, knowing how to protect yourself. What are you looking for? And so they all speak to me. And so I'm now enrolled in Fuller Seminary.
Wait, what, you went into seminary on top of all of this?
So I'm in seminary, which I love. It's blowing my mind. And it's a place for me. It's a haven to learn and to grow and to be restored. And I needed that after a decade and a half of practicing law. All that, you get battered, but that's a lot of us. The more you live, the more you get battered. So I needed a place to rest, but I'm learning so much. And I'll be a medical family therapist when I graduate in a year. And I get to do my internship probably on Skid Row, working with babies. Like, I want to connect with people in real ways, not just as a visitor or a tourist, but as a people in a culture. And we have subcultures within our own culture. And I want to experience life before it's all over. So to me, all of those things speak to each other, but I sometimes run out of time. And that's true. And I have my family. But one of my good friends who lives in San Francisco, she was like, how are you doing this? How are you in seminary right now? And I told her, I said, if I thought about it and I looked at it, I'll be like, oh no, I can't do that. No way. I would not do that. But walking it out, just doing one step and then taking another step and pretty soon it's like, now a year is already done. This is already just by walking, and you turn around and look at the steps. And after, all these years, look how far I've come. Even if you take one step a minute, look how far you can go in 20 years and 15 years and 10 years and 1 year. How many steps is that? So that's how I feel. So I don't look at it. And in that way, I kind of trick myself and move forward.
Move forward indeed. I appreciated Natasha's dedication, not only to law, but also to stepping into these other realms so that she could continue to come back recharged and recalibrated. In fact, even during the pandemic, she shares that she is working on her second novel, The Perishing, which is due to come out in 2021. What a powerhouse she is. Her journey reminded me of another friend who fell in love with law, but also became an author. However, unlike Natasha, Jessica Childress grew up wanting to be a lawyer. Her first aspiration for law started when she was playing with her brother as a child.
I loved being an advocate when I was a kid. And I forgot that when I was a kid, you remember it now, but I forgot that when I was a kid, my brother and I would play basketball. And we had cable, but we got cable television later on in life. So we would play basketball to really try to win cable time from each other because we had to split the amount of time that we could share the television. And when we would play these games, I might win or lose, but if I would win, then I would get my brother's 30-minute block of cable time. So this is going to tie into law in just a second. We would often forget who had won the games. And so we would argue over who had the time based on who had won the game. And so I decided that we were going to draw up contracts to solidify these promises that we had made based on how many games we had won and how much time we each were entitled to. And so that was probably the first time that I became a transactional attorney. I was probably 11 years old.
Wow, I never would have thought of that, let alone at 11 years old. It really shows how passionate Jessica was for advocacy and communicating justice. She didn't know what being a lawyer was, but when she did finally learn more, she got curious.
Before that, we had an encyclopedia set, the World Book Encyclopedia, before the internet, obviously. And we always watched the nightly news with Tom Brokaw, and Tom would always talk about the Attorney General, and the Attorney General was Janet Reno. And I just wanted to know what an attorney was. And so my dad took me to our World Book Encyclopedia set and made me look up the term lawyer. And I was intrigued by what a lawyer did. I was intrigued by this image of Janet Reno on the screen. And that's when I, first thought this would be a cool career, but I really had no idea what a lawyer actually did. It wasn't until I was 15 years old and had an opportunity to serve as an intern with the Richmond City Attorney's Office in Richmond, Virginia, that I really knew that law was the field that I wanted to pursue.
Jessica worked under her mentor, Kelly Harris, who showed her what a career in law could look like. She loved everything she learned about, which led her to becoming an attorney. Today, she specializes in employment law and practices it under her own firm, Childress Firm in Washington, D.C. But that isn't the only thing that brings her joy in law. She also writes children's books. Why? Well, it starts with why she was passionate about pursuing employment law to begin with.
I went into my federal clerkship thinking that that would be my path. I ended up in big law, practicing employment law, and still wanted to do that civil rights work. And employment law has a nice hybrid of both litigation. If you're in law school, people are probably asking you, do you want to be a litigator or a transactional attorney? But employment law is a nice hybrid of both of those, litigation and transactional. But it also has a civil rights component because employment law, one of the key employment laws is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And so you do have the opportunity to delve into civil rights.
Her interest in civil rights stemmed from wanting to make an impact across generations. But she realized working in a big corporation was not permitting her to create those ripple effects. So she thought of doing that in another way.
And I was at a big law firm for a little while. It ended up at the Department of Justice because there was an opening in one of the employment law divisions of one of the components of the Department of Justice. Didn't like government practice, really wanted to be more creative. And I'm sure you can empathize with that urge to be creative, and went back to private practice, went back to big law. And my entrepreneurial bug was really ticking. Also, just wanted to be able to show up to work as my authentic self. And very little diversity in the law firm where I was, and really just wanted to create content to encourage kids, especially girls of color, to pursue law. I still wanted to practice, and I opened my own law firm 4 years ago and also started the jurisprudence company. And I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Under Jurisprudence LLC, she created a series of children's books to tell the stories of an 11-year-old jurist who became a lawyer that changed history. By intentionally writing a story from a young Black girl's perspective, Jessica wanted to speak directly to young girls of color and tell them that they can do whatever they want to do, including seeing themselves as a lawyer. I asked her where the inspiration came from.
I love the American Girl books as a kid. So here is one of my American Girl books. This is called Changes for Addie. And Addie, she was a slave. She grew up in North Carolina, and she aspired to be an educated girl.
Jessica is sharing a copy of Change for Addie from the American Girls collection of children's books. A series of stories about how Addie, a courageous African-American girl, navigates different challenges, including escaping slavery and reuniting with her family at the end of the Civil War. The American Girl series is a collection of fictional stories by various authors depicting different females overcoming challenges with courage. From 1999 to 2004, it published books based on the dolls they were also making to empower young girls to dream bigger about their career. Jessica realized the power of storytelling as she knew how it felt to read Addie's journey and find a character that looked like her with whom she could relate to.
And I fell in love with her story. And so this is just one of the books. My dad actually gave me this book in 1995. I'm just going to show this because I love this book. Is so special to me. But it inspired me to write. Addie's story ended after, I believe, 6 books, and I really wanted more. And I wanted a girl who was industrious. I wanted a girl who looked like me. I read this book when I was 10, 11 years old. And even though I loved Addie's story, she was a slave. She was not a girl of my time. And I wanted to create a character that looked like me, did the things that I did. And so this is why I created Jurisprudence, 11-year-old lawyer who lives in DC, loves riding her bike. She's taken the bar exam. She has a really diverse group of friends. And I'm going to show you some of her friends here. Maddie, Sophie, and they're all 11-year-old lawyers. And they are all educated. They're fun. They have their different interests and their different goals, but they come together over the love of law. So I just wanted to make sure that kids of all backgrounds, of all races, of all hues could see themselves reflected in the literature, because diversity in the legal profession is certainly lacking, and diversity in children's literature is also lacking. And so I knew that that was a problem. I wanted to attack it. And out of that, Jurisprudence was birthed out of that.
What we read and see matters. And wow, I'm so inspired, not only by how Jessica pursued her love for law, but also how she wanted to find creative ways to empower the next generation to see themselves in this career. But how did she do this? I asked her if she was ever worried of balancing the roles of being a lawyer and a children's book author. She shared how being brave on many levels was important to making her career come to life.
So that idea came to me, and I just started writing. I just literally just started writing down, in my own handwriting, writing this story. And the courage to actually do that came from, I think I've always just been a very brave person. And there have been different levels of bravery that I've had to exercise over the course of this entrepreneurial journey. But actually writing, it was a very private endeavor when I started writing the book. I didn't tell too many people. So that actually didn't require that much bravery. I think the bravery actually came when I actually finalized the book and was about to publish it. because I was a practicing lawyer and lawyers just don't really do this type of thing. You should just be billing hours and care to write great legal briefs. But I really wanted to write this story. So I think it took a level of bravery to tell people, oh, by the way, I'm also a children's book author and I finished this entire chapter book. That took bravery.
And I'm glad she did get more comfortable sharing her courageous journey. Today, I see her often in the press doing interviews to share her book and advocating for diversity in literature. She is not only serving clients with her legal work, but also empowering next generations with her children's book. There really are no limits in how you serve and pursue law. That doesn't mean being a writer is the only other creative way you can engage with law. Meet my friend Maureen Murat. Maureen is an attorney and entrepreneur who specializes in crowdfunding, as well as blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, a field that has been growing and a gap she is filling with her passion for law. Like Natashia, law wasn't originally the career she saw herself in, but when she first got exposed to the field, she fell in love with it.
I thought I was going to be a pediatrician. I think everybody wants to be a doctor when they're younger, but in my family, a lot of people are healthcare professionals, so it was kind of natural to kind of want to do something in healthcare. But I started working at a law firm part-time doing mailings for her, mailing out her advertisements. This is when they were mailing out advertisements on the glossy paper and, thick envelopes and stuff. And so one of her paralegals or legal assistants was fired, and she had me help out with other stuff, right? Doing letters for clients, some of the stuff that paralegal was doing. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I like this kind of work. And it was a bankruptcy law office. So the people who we were helping were, in distress, really. And so I found my calling, I guess, in a way, because I felt like, what I really wanted to do was something that I felt like I should do. Whereas like this law thing kind of called me and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to do something different.
A career that feels like a calling. When we have those moments, it's thrilling. And Maureen wanted to go all in, but it wasn't easy. I asked her what skills really made a difference in her career looking back, and she shared that a few stood out.
So skills that I thought that I think have helped me going forward. Some of those skills I didn't learn until, later in life. And not that I'm, that old yet, but I think when you go from undergrad to law school or to a professional degree, the hurdle you jump is so steep and it's almost like you're in a different world. I remember my undergrad degree was in psychology. So I did a lot of writing. And then I get to law school and my lawyering process professor, essentially our legal writing professor, essentially told me my writing sucks. And I'm like, I need to start over. And I was like, no one had ever said that to me before. I mean, she didn't say it in those exact words, but, but the thing was that it dawned on me that, I was definitely somewhere else, in a new world. And I had to learn this skill after obviously feeling kind of deflated and wanting to say, okay, well, you obviously don't know what writing is, right? But once I got over being defensive, I should say, I realized that, one, I'm supposed to be here to learn. It's costing me a lot of money to learn this. So let me just soak up what I can. And so I think writing, and not just writing persuasively. So what I was doing before in my undergrad degree was not about being persuasive. It was just essentially writing and sharing research. Whereas in legal writing persuasively is such a good tool. It's amazing. So you take that from like something very formal, like a motion or in an email or something like that, that sometimes, we underestimate how powerful some of our words can be, even when it's just a brief statement. So I think that skill, and I'm continuing to hone on that skill. Sometimes I have to learn how to keep it short, but we all have our vices. But that skill is definitely something that I think has helped me move forward.
Oh yeah, I'd agree with that. Good writing is powerful. Persuasive writing? We're all needing to learn how to do more of that, especially in this attention-based economy. What else?
Another skill I would say is that another thing that happened to me in law school was, as I said before, I was working during the day and going to school at night, and I was stressed. Okay, so I had to figure out a way to find things to do that would make my life easier during the day. And obviously that took time too. But once I did that, I was able to figure out, okay, I know that when I work out in the morning, I'm just a better person all day. So you got to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. But that also means, I was the grandma in my law school study group. I was going to bed at like 10:30. So that means I had to go to bed early, wake up early, set my clothes aside, do things, that would work for my schedule, and eat, and also finding little gadgets and things that were helpful. Like one of my friends used to call me Budget Betty because I would find things that were like really good deals, whether it be from flights or whatever. And I would use that type of thinking towards like figuring out how to make this law school thing work, because I wasn't going to quit, right? I had already decided, I turned 30 in law school. So there was no going back for me. So I was like, I got to do this. And so I think those skills were really helpful in terms of figuring out like, okay, this is what I want to do. And these are skills you can build on, right? So writing led to speaking, and speaking was never something I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily like the sound of my voice on when it's recorded. I know I'm probably not the only one, but that just wasn't something that I was thinking about or even equipped to do. And I think in law school, you should really teach people this, especially because we do moot court and we do mock trials and things like that.
Her resilience really paid off. One thing she also shared with me is how much effort it took her to even first enter law school. She needed both the grades and the money. And despite her hard work, she didn't make it the first 3 times she applied to law school. But she didn't give up. She wanted to go to law school, so she waited another year to apply and got into the school the 4th time she tried. That's 3 years of waiting for something. When was the last time you waited for 3 years for something you really wanted? Patience and persistence is key. And sometimes we get a gentle reminder to keep moving forward from people around us. Maureen shares how she got that encouragement from one of her former supervisors, who happens to be an attorney. She was at the verge of wanting to give up.
I started working with this attorney, and she was just what I needed, because she asked me what did I want to do with myself, blah, blah, blah. And I was honest with her. I was like, I really want to go to law school. And she was like, do you want to go full time or do you want to go while you're working? I was like, I'll go part time and work during the day. And she said, if you want to go to law school, don't let anybody tell you can't. And I was like, okay. And this was my new boss, right? So she knew that, she had already been to law school. So she knew how stressful it can be, and that she was okay with me doing that while working with her. And so I did it. I applied again, because I started at that position in November of 2011. And then I applied again, did all what I needed to do. And then I got into school in 2012. So it was like, okay, this is it. But I think, to your point, not doing that, not, believing in myself, because sometimes you need someone else to say, oh, you can do this, for you to be like, okay, maybe I can do this. I think those 2 people in that period of my life, to have them say those things to me, was perfect timing. I couldn't have asked for, a better way to kind of say, get going, So I think if I had not done that and not taking the risk and not, pushed myself as a result of these people pushing me, I would not be here today.
The people who we surround ourselves with matter. This reminds me of another conversation we had at our other podcast, Dear Workplace, where we talked about the importance of relationships we shape at work. And good thing Maureen was honest about what she wanted, as that permitted her to build these new relationships and also gave her the courage to pursue her dream. I asked her how she got into the niches of crowdfunding, blockchain technology, and cryptocurrencies. Resilience came up again.
I applied to clerkships in Tennessee, in Oklahoma, in Oregon. So, and none of those panned out. So it was kind of like, okay, well, what can I do next? Obviously, at that point, I'm starting to feel a little, like I'm failing because I had good grades. I had a job while I was in law school. I was working as a paralegal while going to school at night. So I was super disciplined. I felt like I had all the attributes to being a good lawyer, but the universe just wasn't, aligning with what I wanted to do. So I started a business called Crowdy Advisors in April of 2016. So I graduated law school in May 2016. So by then I realized, okay, I'm not going to get a clerkship. You got to do something else. So I was going to actually work with a couple friends on a platform that was going to help small businesses raise money. At that time, the crowdfunding act had just come or was about to become activated, like on May 16th, 2016, right? So we weren't able to make that work. But then I realized, well, what I was going to do was going to be on the compliance side anyway. And so I didn't really need them, to be able to do what I wanted to do. So I started Crowdy Advisors, LLC, and it started out to be this grand plan, but, it turned out to be a little more focused now, thank goodness. But then as I was trying to look for clients for my crowdfunding business, I was running into people who were talking about doing ICOs and what that's called an initial coin offering for cryptocurrencies. And I was like, what's that? So, there was a lot about it that sounded a bit off to me. So I felt like I needed to figure out what this new thing was that people were talking about, because why not? Especially because it was in technology and I had garnered some interest in technology and thinking about fintech in a different way. So I was like, oh, let me look into this. And so, long story short, here I am.
Today, not only is she continuing her business and is an attorney at the District of Columbia Department of Insurance and Securities and Banking, but she is also teaching as an adjunct professor at the UNH School of Law on how token economies, cryptocurrency regulations, and blockchains are changing the way we think about law. And in a way, Maureen may have not fallen into this unique niche and expertise if things panned out the way she thought. Because she initially didn't get the opportunities she thought she wanted, she had to pave new paths and find new ways of doing things on her own. It made me think of what Natashia shared about the importance of self-love and how to not get discouraged if our success is not coming up as fast as we had hoped. She shares the lesson she brings up to her students as she teaches creative writing and law at UCLA.
When you graduate and you start seeing one or two of them do really well, like great things are happening, you guys are all working equally as hard, but sometimes the sun shines on somebody else before it gets to you. And that's an uncomfortable feeling, especially among artists, when you're like, I'm better or whatever, because you have to have an ego to move forward, to live, to keep going when you have failures, and you will have failures. That's how you learn. So I tell my students, I said, when you have that feeling, you need to recognize it. Don't push it away and then have that fake, oh, great for you. Like you could do that. But it's also internally, it's telling you that something is wrong. So I tell them, I said, when you feel that, I need you just to start clapping. Even if it's a slow clap, be like, okay, she did that. All right, he did that. And it starts out slow. And then you recognize that that was uncomfortable for me, but you keep walking. And then the next time it happens, you clap a little faster. It gets easier to be able to encourage and applaud other people. And then pretty soon it comes naturally. So it's recognizing that discomfort, not pushing it away, but embracing it. The same with even shame, embracing it. Because if you embrace it, it's pretty soon it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, because you've done it, and you end up modeling the right thing for other people, because your time will come and you will need people to stand with you, congratulate you, and to push you forward, because you'll need that and you'll want that, because we're human. And part of our existence is our coexistence. And going back to your question about COVID, we see what a great need we have for each other. Even if you say, you know what, I don't like people. I love my cat. Like, people are finding out that they actually do like people. It's not just their cat and their dog. They actually kind of need to just walk in the grocery store, even if they don't need anything. Let me just push around my cart just to be near people. But we need each other. And how awesome is it if you can teach yourself and learn how to encourage other humans? Because what does it cost you really? And it really changes you.
Mindset matters. I love how all of them reminded me that being a lawyer is certainly not an easy role, but you grow to love it as you see the impact it has. All of this brings joy, but also some challenges. That said, you are not helpless. You can own the narrative you want to live.
I think people should understand that it's very lonely. So everything that I've described, being a lawyer, like I'm in court for, a couple of hours during the week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but generally I'm sitting in an office, writing out my arguments. I'm reading to understand. I'm on the phone. As a creative writer, you're writing alone. Your book all your successes and pieces that come out are few and far between. So you really, especially writers and artists, we have to congratulate, every victory. You just have to do whatever celebration you do. And also as a teacher, like I prepare before I'm in front of my students. I want it to be worth it for them to show up because I know they could be anywhere and they choose to pay for this class, to be in this class. So I want to bring my best self. And if they're the next great whatever, or even if they're not, even if they become a journalist and it's all to themselves, I'm honored to be part of their journey somewhere and maybe, make a difference or an impact. And as a therapist, I just know how much I've been alone and abandoned. And if I can be that for someone else to show up, on time and, let's just talk, let's real talk, whatever you want to talk about, with no judgment. I think that's important, but all of it is lonely. I was last week, I was arguing because I'm trying to introduce new legislation that ends police violence in the Black and Brown and BIPOC communities, so Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, because Black and Brown people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police. And it's a public epidemic. So there's a great study through Yale and Penn State and another university just looking at the statistics, but that talk about that. So I was arguing for these 2 pieces of legislation in front of other lawyers because I want to have the support of other lawyers and law professions to have a bigger voice. And I remember one of the people asked me, this one woman, she says, well, why don't you go to the ACLU or to Black Lives Matter, which are great organizations doing great, great work, but it often doesn't look like that. For people who are engaged in social justice, you don't have like the ACLU partner or the whoever partner. You're doing the hashtags like everyone else. You're donating like everyone else. But I told the person who asked the question, I said, we are not helpless. As individuals, we have to unlearn helplessness because we live in a society where they're saying, oh, you can have a voice, but really, what can we change? So we start thinking of things like that, but we're not helpless and we don't always have a partner. Sometimes you're alone in a PTA meeting, even if you have kids, you're there trying to advocate for your kid and other kids, or you're at a city council meeting and you're by yourself. But it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. You're going at the right pace. You're doing a great job. You're standing and other people are being affected, even if they never tell you.
I think about this even more as we are living through the pandemic transition this summer. It's been a bit restless in the States as folks are leaving jobs, starting new jobs, and also figuring out how in-person engagement is going to look. Some of us are feeling a bit overwhelmed and helpless. But the message everyone has shared with me today reminded me that it doesn't matter where you are working. You can build your own narrative and stand back up again. This is why when I asked for any final advice from each of them, they shared a similar message. Believe in yourself and your voice.
Never be afraid to believe in yourself. I think you are your biggest advocate. And when we want the world to believe in us, We can't expect anyone else to believe in us if we do not believe in ourselves wholeheartedly.
Confidence takes practice. And when you practice something, you don't do the same thing over and over again, right? Like when you're training for a marathon, I've trained for a marathon. I told you I'm crazy. I've trained for a few marathons. When you train for a marathon, you don't just run, you do cross training, right? You have to do strength training, you do yoga, you do cycling, play tennis, etc. So when I say confidence takes practice, that also means, in addition to like what I was saying about talking to yourself in the mirror and reading your sticky notes, you also have to build upon whatever it is that you feel is your calling. So like I said, if you have something that really interests you and really wants you to be, and it's really something that you want to give back to the world, then you have to invest in it. Oh, that's my other hashtag, invest in yourself. And investing in yourself isn't always about money either, right? Sometimes it's just about taking a break, going to sleep, or whatever it means for when you pour into yourself, that when you come back on the other side, you feel like a better version of yourself.
Sometimes it's just doing nothing, being quiet, listening to music, going for a drive with my music on. So that's who I try to be. So that's my advice to you. Love yourself, take care of yourself that way, and give yourself grace, because not every day, and maybe it goes into 2 days or 3 days, your body knows what it needs. Even if your mind you can't fathom it because your frontal cortex is saying, but your body needs what it needs. Give it to it and just relax. You'll be okay. And you still have a long way to go.
Indeed. Innovators, you got this. Believe in yourself, invest in yourself, and care for yourself. Wow ended up finding joy in a career outside of law, hearing how Maureen, Natashia, and Jessica are pursuing law and creativity warmed my heart. And there are many other lawyers out there who also love what they do and are making a difference every day. And for those who are tuning in who are inspired to pursue law, I hope that this reminds you that you've got this. You're listening to Curious Monica by InnovatorsBox. I'm Monica Kang, and today we looked into what it's like to build a career in law. I hope you enjoyed it. Please take a moment to share, review, and rate this podcast to help spread the word. In our next episode, I'm eager to visit a field that's been growing and getting more attention as of late: careers in diversity and inclusion. What does it mean to do this work, and why does it really matter? Curious to learn more? Join us next week at Curious Monica. See you soon!
Hello there, I'm Luke Helder, the head composer at InnovatorsBox, and I hope you're enjoying Curious Monica. I'm obsessed with art and the power it has to convey meaning and emotion, and I also really like tea. This show is brought together by our awesome team: producer Seren O, audio engineers Sam Lermut and Ravi Ladd, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Akriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and me on music. And of course, this show is hosted and directed by the curious woman herself, Monica Kang, founder and CEO at InnovatorsBox. To continue the curiosity and creativity of the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We would love to hear what you are curious about and what secrets Monica could uncover in future episodes. See you next week.